Good morning, this is a response to Yamikaiba123 on You Doubled, your video there on, which is turned into a response to one of Professor Anton's videos called A Thing Is Not a Thing, which in turn is a response to one of mine. Yeah, thanks for that response, great, and thanks also for putting it on You Doubled. It gives me an opportunity to test the system out more, which is great. Yeah, some interesting stuff there. I'm kind of glad you brought in the physics thing. I haven't responded to Corey's video myself yet, but I will do after making this one. And I was kind of aware when I was making my videos that I was using this word thing and it was potentially problematic. And he was right to call me up on those kind of things, because there is a history of thingness, which he's very steeped in far more than I am, and which gives it very particular resonances. I mean, I wasn't really intending to draw upon those, but I should really have acknowledged them, and it's fair enough. But, you know, because I'm still kind of working in the shadow of a set of ideas to do with thingness, really coming out of a video I made about all the small things are hard. I don't know if you saw that video on YouTube, which was just to do with how we understand experience. You know, the kind of psychology of understanding is one of my areas of interest, and how we use metaphor to render our world understandable, really, including those parts of it they don't have direct access to, like the very small. And as I said in that video, and which you're plugging into in some ways here, you know, we do tend to understand the very small as small hard things, and we do tend to understand the world of objects, the world that our eyes present to us for the most part, as a set of small hard things, you know, as thingness, which I quite like. So yeah, so I'm really kind of thinking about that. What I liked about your video there is that you're using that kind of physics distinction between, you know, kind of wave functions and particle descriptions. You're kind of reanimating that so we can apply that to this discussion, which I think is interesting. Because one of the themes of the video that I made that Corey responded to was to do with kind of life and death, and how we experience, not so much how we experience, but how we understand the act of dying, and what kind of value judgments we place on the animate versus the inanimate. You know, and we talk about the animate, or we do talk about it as things sometimes, but it feels prejudicial when we do that. We like to talk about the animate, particularly animated human life, as a series of events. You know, it feels much more honest to the experience, whereas we don't usually have that kind of attitude toward the inanimate. You know, we do make this harsh distinction between the things of the world. You know, coffee cups and pens and brick walls. We do make that distinction between those things and these, you know, soft, hard, kind of warm bodies, which we don't like to think of as things. But in a sense, it is kind of thing chauvinism, and we are, as you point out, everything is an event in that sense. You know, these things are wave functions as much as I am. So so that distinction doesn't really hold. So when I'm saying things, I'm saying, you know, we have to apply that kind of logic elsewhere, which isn't just to dismiss the peculiar characteristics of some things events as opposed to other things events. And of course, being a possessor of consciousness and a sentient being myself, I have a lot of affection for those particular thing events that associate with sentient beings. But that doesn't, yeah, in the great scheme of things, in the great scientific picture that you're painting, the great overall picture, they are just interesting differences. Okay. Yeah, just in terms of, sorry, I feel like I'm rambling, but never mind. Just in terms of the kind of death thing, the cessation thing, I mean, one of the things I find interesting about that, in relation to what you're talking about, and your mobilization of the wave-particle distinction as a way of describing the events of the world, in a way there's a parallel, isn't there, between the kind of wave-particle distinction as opposed to the thing-event distinction, and potentially to the kind of small, hard things, soft, vaporous, spiritual things. And this isn't a good science, this is just probing at our understanding, really. And yeah, and the kind of descriptions of the dying process, the kind of descriptions of those processes in which we stop being animate and join the world of those things which we do feel comfortable about referring to as things, that the way we describe that process for a large part depends on the mobilisation of those metaphors, how we experience it. If we do think of it as the becoming a thing in the prejudicial sense, changing from the event to the small hard thing, changing from the making that kind of transition, then we don't feel good about it. If we see it as a continuous process, long way off, 7:30. If we see it as a more continuous process, those things don't arise, and that's very common in spiritual traditions, isn't it? In spiritual traditions, there's lots of that idea of death being a merging, particularly a merging of liquids, actually. A drop of water longing for the ocean, as it appears in songs. But lots of spiritual traditions talk about it as that kind of a drop of liquid joining a larger body of liquid, as opposed to a small hard thing mysteriously just disappearing, or a phase transition in which something like an event, something like a spirit, condenses and congeals into a small hard fallen object. Anyway, I feel like I really rambled. Sorry about that. But yeah, that thingness I think is interesting, and the fact that things like a walk in the park, things are have different histories, and our understanding of what a thing is has different histories. And the more we enrich that, the better we're able to cope with those kinds of understandings. Because we're not really we are understanding, but not really describing that either the world of particles and waves or the world of life and death, are we really? We're mobilising metaphors to try to understand it, and some work better than others in different situations, don't they? So yeah, I hope that's made some kind of sense. Thanks very much.